Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thanks very much for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And as you all know, Congress has a less than 12% approval rating, so I'm glad to get invited anywhere. So thank you for having me. I told the Speaker the other day, I said, Mr. Speaker, it's not really as bad as you think. There are actually three things that poll worse than we do. He said, what could that possibly be? I said, Lindsay Lohan, meth labs in North Korea. So the bar is pretty low. I want to thank you all for being here, taking your time to come to Washington to talk to us about the important issues that you face. And once again, my name is Phil Rowe. I'm just a country doctor from Northeast Tennessee, a lifelong Tennessean that about 8-9 years ago decided that I didn't like the direction the country was going. I felt like I could serve my country again after over 30 years in private medical practice, and so I went off my medication and ran for Congress, and look what happened. So be careful to be sure to stay on your medicine. I was a young physician in Memphis. I tell people that I actually won a free trip to Southeast Asia. Many of you did the same thing. I went to the mailbox and had this draft notice, and I had a 6-week-old child when I went in the military, as many of you probably did, and went through basic training, was stationed in Korea 13 months at Camp Casey, Camp Bradley, and I spent a few months down in Seoul at the 121 evac hospital. Grew up in a military town, Clarksville, Tennessee, where the 101st Airborne is, and I've always felt like I was part of the military. And I know in the Congress today, less than 20% of us have served in the military, and back in the 70s, it was over 80% had served in the military. So there's a different I know many of you maybe are World War II, Korea, Vietnam. A lot smaller percentage of us have served now than did in previous generations. I think it's a real honor. It is an honor to do what I do and have the time to do this, or the opportunity to do this, I should say. And I want to, again, thank you all and your families for coming up here. I know a lot of times we forget when we're in the military that there's a family at home that loves us and cares for us and waits for us when we come home and gives us the opportunity and privilege of serving. I also want to thank Dr. Shulkin, who's our new Secretary of the VA, who's back. I've got to be careful what I say because he's backstage. He is going to be a great secretary. I've had the opportunity for the last 18 months to work with him on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I believe he is going to do a great job for our veterans in this country. I know that you all know, and back in 2014, I've been on the Veterans Affairs Committee since 2009 when I was sworn into Congress, and at that point in time, we were spending about $97 billion a year on veterans care. Today, it's just a little south of $180 billion. We've added almost 100,000 employees during that time, from 260,000 employees to over 360,000. Now, the VA has more employees now than the U.S. Navy does. I don't know that the VA is doing that much better job. I know that my concern is, and I think we have the resources to take care of what we are doing today. I think we need to do a better job of managing, and I intend to make sure to hold the VA accountable. I know there's a bill we have coming up next week that we're going to mark up, an accountability bill, and I know many of you are aware of the scandal that occurred in Phoenix, and it turned out that these wait lists were more pervasive than we had thought. And one of the things this accountability bill is going to do is to give Dr. Shulkin, who's asked for these things, the ability to fire or to hold people accountable for what they do. And there are many egregious, I could go over them, I'm not going to this morning, that have occurred, acts that have occurred that took months and months and sometimes even years to make right. I come from the private sector. That doesn't happen in the private sector. I can tell you that some of these events that occurred, the door wouldn't hit you in the backside on the way out that day. That's how long you would be in the building if you did some of the things that we see done. So I think Dr. Shulkin needs these tools. He is going to get these tools. We're going to mark this bill up just next week. One of the primary things I want to work about as a physician who saw veteran patients in my office and who saw veterans as an active duty military doctor. I want to be sure that we put the veteran in charge of healthcare decisions. And what I mean by that is, in my practice, the person I worked for was the patient, not the insurance company and not the hospital and not anybody else. It was the patient. What I want to do is I want the veterans and the doctors to be making those healthcare decisions. If you feel like that you're not getting the care you need at the VA hospital, then you should have a choice to go where you want to. And many veterans, maybe I was a little presumptuous in my reelection in October, but I traveled to Lubbock, Texas, and to the Pasco Valley in the Yakima in Washington to visit rural areas where VAs are. And the veterans are spread out all across this country. In my district, for instance, almost 10% of my district are veterans. We have about 70,000 veterans in the 1st Congressional District. And I know we have Bob Hensley, I think Bob is sitting right out front here, who's a veteran from Mountain City, Tennessee. And I want to thank him for being here and fellow Tennesseans for being here today. I know there's some Texans out there, and I want to remind you there would not be a Texas if it were not for Tennessee. Didn't want to point that out. The opportunity, what I want to see happen with the VA in healthcare is I want you to have the absolute best healthcare that can be provided by anybody in the world. You should have that as a veteran. You've earned it. You deserve to have it. So I think accountability and access to care is a huge item for me. We have I co-chair the Doctors Caucus in Congress, and there is a huge issue, not just among veterans, but certainly among our country, in opioid abuse. And we've had now, this is unbelievable, that we've had prescription drug overdose deaths last year killed as many people as car wrecks do, or breast cancer in this country. It's a scary epidemic that's preventable. And it's a passion of mine to see this stamped out. It is something that we should not have. There's an appropriate use for opioids, and then there's an inappropriate use. And I want to be sure that veterans who need these medications get them, but that we also protect people from the deaths that are occurring. I know there's another thing that I'm very concerned about. Also, with Tim Waltz, co-chair a caucus in Congress that takes care of folks with PTSD. And we haven't done the job we need to do. The VA is at the forefront. I will give them a big shout out. There are a lot of things they need to do, but the VA has been a leader in PTSD treatment, and it's an issue across this country. And we passed a bill called the 21st Century Cures Act, where we acknowledge that we need to do more for not just veterans, but for other patients in this country that are suffering from PTSD. One of the biggest things that we're going to have to do, and I know Dr. Shulkin is concerned and worried about this, is the enormity of it, is to transform the VA's IT system. And what do I mean by that? We spent $4.5 billion last year. That's $4,500 million on technology. And it's right now the VA's healthcare system is a good one. The electronic health record system you got, and I can tell you this from personally installing one, it is not easy to do. I say this sort of as a joke, but it's an electronic health record system that made me a congressman. I mean, it about drove me crazy learning how to use the thing. Technology is good if it works, and the VA system needs to be reformed where they're billing. We're sending people out on the choice program, which we know is not working like it should. I could tell you stories all day that I've heard about how it's not working. We've got to get that working better. But technology is one of the keys to it, so you can bill, so you can pay your bills, so you can do other things with technology. And that's a big, big bite that we're going to take at the apple. One of the things I want to assure you is that I am not sitting up here talking about privatizing the VA. I'm talking about making the VA better. And that's something I think that's extremely important for people to know, that that's not what we're doing. The VA in 20 years is not going to look like the VA today, I can tell you that. Medicine's changing, and it's changing rapidly. We have veterans that live in very rural areas that need access in a different way, whether it's telehealth or other devices that we use. I don't even know I know that probably most of you have a smartphone. There's going to be a tremendous amount of health care provided through a smartphone. And I know I'm getting older because I keep getting these unsolicited emails for the walk-in tub. I don't know about you, but I get one every day now. And but that's going to change how we provide health care to people. I think we have the most bipartisan committee in the Congress, the Veterans Affairs Committee. It's one of the reasons I enjoy working on that committee. It's not about Republican. It's not about Democrat. It's about how we take care of veterans. And that is exactly why I'm on that committee. I want to thank you all again for having me here, and I'm going to finish my remarks by just telling you a story to tell you why I am so passionate about being a chairman and serving on the Veterans Affairs Committee. 1943, a guy in Johnson City, Tennessee, a young man, walked into the Army recruiter in downtown Johnson City and tried to sign up for the United States Marine Corps, and not the Army recruiter, but the Marine Corps. He was turned down. His name was Homer Peace. And the reason Homer was turned down was he was 13 years old. So they didn't allow him to go in the Marine Corps at age 13. But not to be deterred, Homer cleaned up this local derelict, put a suit on him, went down to the Army recruiter, and had him sign as his father that he was 17 years old and he could go in the Army. So he got in the Army, not just the Army, but he got in the 101st Airborne Division at age 13. He parachuted in at Normandy at age 15. He was wounded in France and sent back to England to recover from his injuries. He rejoined his unit and fought in the Battle of the Bulge. 15 years old. Well, his mother didn't even know where he was. She thought he just ran away from home. She didn't even know he was in the war. So he was wounded again at the Battle of the Bulge and sent back, and his recovery, they finally caught up with him, and it took forever to get these records. They finally caught up with Homer, and they separated him from the Army. Came back to Johnson City, Tennessee, and he ran away from home, went to Fort Bragg, and tried to sign up again. And his captain there said, Homer, son, he said, you've been in the Battle of the Bulge, you've been in the Normandy invasion, go home and be a kid. So he went back to Science Hill High School in our hometown as a freshman now, and finished in 1949 and went to East Tennessee State University, our college there in our hometown, and went through ROTC and was commissioned. And he was a police officer and did a lot of other things. But he decided that wasn't good enough, so he went into the Army Rangers in the 1950s. And that wasn't good enough, so he volunteered for Vietnam. And it's a sad ending to the story. Homer was killed in 1965 when the Silver Star in Vietnam. Those, ladies and gentlemen, are the shoulders that we stand on. Unbelievable story. Wouldn't you have liked to have met Homer and gotten to know him and maybe tipped one with him? I certainly would have. I want to thank you. There are stories right out here in this room that are just as compelling. And I want to thank you. You have my solemn promise to do everything I can to make sure that this VA works for you and gives you back the service that you have earned. Thank you very, very much, and may God bless each and every one of you.